Hey everybody, what's good? What's going on? Today's live stream, we're going to talk about the Juniper JNCIA-SEC exam. If you've been kind of following along, I laid out a challenge of going through Juniper's 5 associate level exams, put out some content before on their Junos exam, which is kind of like their routing and switching exam that I passed a couple weeks ago. And this week I went and took their practice exam, which ends up getting you a free voucher if you do good enough. I did. I scheduled my security exam, took that, and passed that. So today I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a walkthrough and feedback on what I thought of the exam, the areas that it covers, and kind of give everybody some tips or pointers as far as the best way or topics to really focus in on when they're studying for the exam. So we should be up on YouTube Live and on Twitter. So I'm just going to go and double check and make sure that those are working real quick. And then we'll actually hop into the content. So let's see real quick. Yep, looks like we're good on Twitter. Let me just pop this open real quick. Let me know if the sound and everything is good. I'm actually using a new setup with my microphone today. So let's see. Just open that up real quick. He's in here. Okay. Yep, that looks good. Check out YouTube real quick. And, let's see. I'm not seeing that on YouTube. Let me just double check one thing real quick. Let's see. Videos. Just checking the live stream there. We'll go with it. We'll see what happens. And if we run into any issues, then I'll just upload it later. So let's see. Let's get back at this over here. All right. So we kind of went through the Junos Genius website before. I kind of laid out kind of the different programs that they have there and the way that they set their training up and they have their exams and stuff like that. So I'm not going to do a deep dive back into that. And also in the last video, we talked about the Pearson VUE online testing experience. So I'm not really going to go into that again. It was the same thing, very easy, straightforward. Only took about 5 or 10 minutes to get everything set up and good to go. So as far as the JNCI-SEC exam, what that is Juniper's associate level security exam, and it covers a few, wide-ranging topics, pretty much dealing with their SRX line of firewalls, and then some of the different subscription features that you have with that, as far as their antivirus or IDP or unified threat management. Some additional cloud services that they have, and then really hits on the basics of security policies within the SRX. So if you were at all familiar with the Junos routing and switching type of stuff, really, they talked a lot about firewall filters, which in essence is the same thing as an ACL in Cisco speak, right? So it's not stateful in any way. You have to have inbound and outbound rules. And that's pretty much what you use on their routers and switches. And you can actually use that on their firewalls as well. But the primary way of doing any type of configurations as far as ACLs go on the SRX firewalls is using what they call security policies. And the SRX firewalls use what they call zone-based policies. So it's really intuitive. It's very easy to set up. I find that I have a much easier time explaining the underlying principles of Juniper firewalls and the way that they work to newer engineers compared to Cisco ASAs, which are kind of confusing with the way that they do their different trust, untrust, and the manner in which you need to put policies in place. So with the SRXs, it's really as straightforward as you have one zone which your traffic is being sourced from, and then another zone, which is your destination, and then you put in a policy that states from zone A to zone B, match this particular source IP address or IP address ranges to this destination IP address ranges, and then whatever ports or applications you want associated with that. And that's kind of the layout that they go through as far as the security policies go. So let's take a quick look at some of the other topics just to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And then I'll show you a little bit about how I actually did on the exam, and then a few tips for particular information that you're going to want to make sure that you cover. So, we do have one question that came through, and this is from Kevin. And let's see if I move this so you can kind of see this a little bit easier. And he's asking, are the certs still free? Yes, they are still free. All you have to do is go to this Junos Genius website, sign up, go through and do the study materials. They'll have some practice exams, and then there's a certification voucher exam, and you have to get above 70% on that. Pretty much if you do really well on the study exams, which you can take as many times as you want, you should be able to pretty easily pass the voucher exam, and then you'll get a free voucher and you can go and schedule the test. So I think like my turnaround on those, I think was maybe like, I scheduled it maybe a couple days later after I got the exam because I felt pretty ready to go and take the test. So here, I'll actually show you what that looks like here within the Junos Genius website. So if we go on their main page here and we go to their security certification track, we are looking at their associate certification. So that's the JNCIA-SEC. All right. And then we come down into here, and they have all these different modules. So you pretty much go through each of these. And like I said, once you go through all of those different learning modules, which is a combination of reading and videos, they have a practice test. Depending on the certification, they might have multiple practice tests. And like I said, once you do that, then you take the voucher test. And it's pretty straightforward. So the cool thing with these is that you can click into here real quick, and it will show you how you previously did. So you can really focus on the areas that maybe you weren't so strong on. What I would do is go back through these, find the ones that I failed on, and then go back into the study material to look for the specific sections on those just to make sure that I kind of hammered home what those specific topics were and where I went off base as far as getting the answer incorrect. So let me back out of here. Got another question. Let's see, we'll add this here. And so the question is, what cert am I going to go for next? So I'm going to go for their design cert next. Actually dive into that a little bit once I get through talking about what the SEC exam covers, and I'll kind of show you some of the things that will be entailing. So just hold on a couple more minutes and we'll get to that. All right, so like I said, the security policies are a big thing. So going over what those objects are that within that, how the policies work, local policies versus global policies, getting into the unified threat management and kind of some of those other subscriptions that I mentioned, NAT, VPNs, and then a few other tools as far as being able to manage devices And I actually have a little bit more in detailed list that I'm going to go over as far as specific things you want to make sure that you really understand when you take the test. They also did have kind of like this intro area up here, kind of goes over the same type of stuff. If you aren't familiar with Juniper devices, as far as the difference between the control plane and the data plane and the routing engines and their PFE and stuff like that. It also goes into that a little bit. So you could jump into this cert if you really only were dealing with firewalls and you weren't interested in doing the routing and switching exam. You could get into this, and this has enough information so that you would be comfortable enough. Coupled with obviously doing labs, because if you haven't had any experience with the Juniper equipment, you definitely would want to do some labs and get some, maybe not hands-on experience, but virtual hands-on experience. And I have links for that in the description of this video and the previous videos. Let's see. Got another question here. So, how is the difficulty on the voucher exam compared to the real exam? That is an excellent question. So I found that the Junos exam very closely matched the content and the questions that were on the practice exams and the voucher exam for within that section of the Junos Genius website. So I'm not saying that they were exactly the same questions, because obviously they weren't, but they were similar enough where I recognize things. I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. With this SEC exam, it was a bit more difficult. And it was difficult in a way where the questions weren't as familiar, but the topics were things that they definitely covered. So unlike some other certifications and other vendors, when it comes to taking a test and then being like, I have no idea where this content came from, I don't remember covering this, there wasn't anything that was on the exam that wasn't something that was definitely in the training material, and also wasn't something that they had other questions that were related to it on the practice exams. The one thing that I will say, between the practice exam and the voucher exam, those are kind of a bit shorter than what the actual certification exam is. Certification exam, I think, was 65 questions. And I think if we look here, you won't see it here, but I think the practice exam was like 35 questions and the voucher exam was like 40 questions. So it was tough. I'm not going to lie. But I did get an 81 out of, or not out of, I got an 81 as far as the score goes. And the passing score, I think, was a 64. So I did really well on it. But when I was taking it, I was like, yeah, okay, I know this stuff, but these aren't exactly like the questions that I saw, on the practice exams and the voucher exam, which is fine, because the content and the topics were stuff that they did cover. So you kind of just have to really make sure that you know the information that they cover and don't second guess yourself. I mean, which is kind of a stereotypical thing that people always say when taking exams. But that in this case, was definitely very true. Let me just double check and see if we have any other questions coming from anywhere else. Okay, yep, that all looks good. So let me move on here. So this is a little bit of a breakdown of the different section analysis and how I did on it. Like I said, I got an 81, so that's pretty good. And the different areas, you're talking about SRX devices, and that was kind of a little bit of high level. This is what an SRX is. This is how it compares to the rest of, Juniper's device line. This is kind of, the functionality of it. And like I said, a lot of that was overlap of the intro device stuff from the Junos certification itself. Security objects, security policies, Sky ATP. So this is a service that they offer that does various types of security services in the cloud, and also provides different types of threat feeds and things like that. So I actually don't have any experience with using that in real life. So that was the first time that I was reading or understanding any of that. I mean, it was all pretty straightforward. Oh, one thing I will point out was kind of interesting. Everything that they did in the training, for the most part, was all GUI based. So using Sky ATP or using their the enterprise or security director or all these different Juniper tools, it was all GUI based. And in my experience and what I do, I don't use any GUI stuff with Juniper at all. It's all completely CLI. So that was kind of interesting for me since I already understood the concepts. It wasn't very hard as far as understanding what was going on, but it was interesting from the perspective of going through the training and seeing everything kind of from a hierarchical GUI perspective of click here, click here, click here, and then you do the thing. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I would do that on the device as, set security, whatever, and the hierarchical way that I would do it with the CLI. Let's see, we got another question here. Oh, no worries about bombarding me with questions. I mean, that's the reason that we're doing this. So this question is, let's see if I can move it somewhere here. Let's see if I can make it so you can see this a little bit better. Not related, but do you have any advice on the path to take after getting your CCNA and DevNet associate? So that depends on a few different things. And you can hit me up on Twitter with this specific question, and we can go a little bit more in depth or in detail. But it really depends on what your end goal is with the CCNA or DevNet associate. Specifically with the DevNet associate, if you're gonna be going that way, I know that the CCNP really is starting to put a lot of emphasis on the topics that were covered in the DevNet. So to me, that seems like the next logical transition or next logical thing to go after. All of that stuff isn't going away. So depending on your environment, if it's something where you actually are using, Python, or you're using some other types of tools to do automation, it really makes sense to start to, learn up on that stuff and integrate it where you can, where it makes sense. But definitely hit me up and we can have some more in-depth conversations about that. Let's see. Okay, so back to here. So Sky ATP, we were talking a little bit about that. NAT, IPsec, UTM, which is a combination, their Unified Threat Management. I use that a lot in the work that I do. That's going to be a combination of their spam, antivirus, content filtering, couple that with the IDP and stuff like that, and then monitoring and reporting. I was really surprised that I sucked on the security objects since that's actually what I use the most. I assume maybe they didn't have a lot of questions on that, and that's why that was a low percentage and I got something wrong somewhere. But yeah, that one kind of surprised me. So real quick, some pointers or let me see, get this out of my way a little bit. So some pointers and stuff like that I think would be beneficial for folks studying to do this. These are areas that they hit hard on, that I would make sure that you really understand these concepts, because you are going to definitely see questions about these types of things. And that is, let's see, NAT. You definitely want to understand the way that NAT works with the Juniper devices, specifically the different variations of NAT. Not so much how to configure it, because like I said, all this stuff is basically done through the GUI, so it's not like you have to memorize the CLI commands of how to do NAT. But understanding the difference between one-to-one static NAT, source NAT, or destination NAT. And source NAT is normally what you're going to be using the most. I mean, that's pretty much whenever you have a whole bunch of devices inside of a network that needs to go out to the internet. It's all private IP space. It's going to be NATed to the external interface when it goes out to do stuff. So definitely make sure that you cover those. Understand IPsec. You got to make sure that you understand the different internet key exchange phases, IKE1, IKE2. Understand the difference between main mode and aggressive mode. Understand the difference between ESP and AH. So, the encryption portion of that versus the authentication portion of that for hashing. Understand HMAC and what is important about that and how that actually works with using a shared key between both ends and how that is used in the hash to exchange things. Understanding Diffie-Hellman. I mean, these are all basic components of IPsec that you need to understand, and they do a pretty good job covering each of those in a way that's understandable in the study content. We already talked about security policies, right? So understanding the different components of that. Addresses, address sets, which are in essence groups. Applications, both custom applications or Junos default applications that are within the firewall. Zone-based policies, right? Which I was talking about. Any type of policy that you do is going to be going from one zone to another, or global policies, right? I use global policies a lot in certain areas where maybe I want to apply IDP or antivirus across everything that happens or all transit traffic through the box, right? So global policy will just do everything. So you want to definitely make sure that you understand those different security policy components. The UTM components, like we talked about, antivirus, spam, content filtering, right? The different types of protocols and traffic that each of those can impact or act on is important to understand. Then there's also the IDS screens that you can do and the IDP components that go on the device as well. You want to make sure that you understand the difference between all of those and how each of those can provide different types of protections to traffic. Juniper tools, we kind of already talked about SkyATP. Security Director is a tool that you want to understand what that does and how you can use that to control and manage a whole bunch of different SRX devices. That's an application that would reside within your network. And you can manage security policies and IDP policies and all that stuff from a central location. Sky Enterprise, on the other hand, is maybe you don't want to have a particular application within your environment. So Sky Enterprise allows you to manage SRX and other Juniper devices, particularly their EX lines, so their switches, from the cloud. So that's kind of an interesting option that you have available to you. So you want to make sure you understand, the differences between those tools and what you would specifically use them for. And then, as I said, the basics and the stuff that was kind of already covered in the routing and switching topics in their Junos exam. That's the stuff dealing with the difference between the routing engine and the PFE. So the difference between the transit traffic and exception traffic, and then firewall filters and how all that stuff works. So those would be areas that I would definitely make sure that you really, really understand, so that you'll be successful at taking the exam. Let me see if there's any other questions anywhere else, and if there's not, then I'll just do a quick rundown of the next exam that I'm gonna go after, and then we'll wrap things up. So let me just see real quick. We look good over there. Hope everybody's doing good. If you have any other questions, even not on this, you go ahead and just hit me up. Let me know. And just checking that YouTube. All right, I'm not necessarily seeing anything there. All right, so let me take a step back here and go back to the Junos Genius website real quick. So did the routing and switching one, did the security one. The next one is going to be in their design certification track. And that is going to be the JNCDA. So the Design Associate Certification. And the things that it's going to be covering is really network design fundamentals, how to structure a network, different types of designs, whether you're dealing with a data center or a WAN or a campus. Little bit of automation, a little bit of network management, probably some failover type of stuff. I think that would kind of make sense. So I'm kind of interested to see how this one plays out. And this kind of, I think, is going to be in my wheelhouse because I've used Juniper devices kind of at various points within different architectures and putting them in place so that they're, optimally aligned to be able to do what they need to do as far as either providing protection or, routing and switching traffic. So we'll see how that goes. And then once I'm done with that, then the next two is going to be the DevOps automation one and the cloud one. Both of those are going to be brand new to me. So I really have no idea what to expect with that because I don't do any DevOps work with the Juniper devices that I use. And I've never bought or used any of their cloud services. So hopefully it doesn't kick my butt too much, but we'll see. So any other questions before I get off of here? See if there is anything else. Oh, one interesting thing with this, different from the other ones, is that they have prep videos as well. The other two that I've done so far has not. So I think I'm going to do these open learning modules first. And then I think I have to watch these videos, and then I'll be able to take the tests and then go for the voucher test. So we'll see how all that goes. All right, so if nobody has any other questions, then I appreciate everybody who joined for watching. I hope this was helpful. Once this is saved, this should be uploaded to YouTube. So it will be there in perpetuity. And if you have any other questions, just hit me up on Twitter, and I'll see if I can help you out. All right, everybody, have a... oh, I got one comment here. I'll throw it up here real quick. Thanks, great content. Keep up the good work and good luck. Oh, appreciate it. Thank you. So we'll chat. Let's see. All right, cool. All right, everybody, take care. Chat later.